No one showed up for my son's heart procedure. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not even the ones who promised they'd always be there. I sat alone in the cold waiting room, clutching a styrofoam cup of coffee gone cold. My son Liam was only 7, small for his age, braver than most adults I knew. He'd smiled before being wheeled into surgery, whispering, "It's okay, Mom. You're enough." My name is Rachel Carter, I'm 35. And if you think this story ends with forgiveness, stay tuned. 3 days later, when the house was finally quiet and Liam was recovering, my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "We need $10,000 for your sister's wedding dress." She texted like it was the most natural thing in the world. I stared at the message for a full minute. No apology, no "How's Liam?" Just another request, another expectation. 4 years I'd been their emergency fund, their emotional buffer, their invisible provider. So this time I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I simply sent $1 with a note. "Buy a veil. You'll need it more than a conscience." Then I opened my banking app and froze their shared access to every joint account I'd foolishly left open for family convenience. 10 minutes later, Mom's call came, unanswered. 2 hours later, Dad's message arrived. "What's wrong with you?" "This is family." I didn't reply to that either. But at 9:03 the next morning, the bank manager called. His tone was cautious, rehearsed. "Miss Carter, your parents are here in the branch. They're trying to withdraw funds from your business account." I smiled for the first time in days. "Tell them Rachel said family time is officially over." By the time I reached the bank, my parents were already there, sitting side by side like two offended royals, faces twisted in disbelief. Mom's voice cut through the lobby. "Rachel, what's this nonsense? We've been trying to access the funds for your sister's wedding. The manager says you froze everything." I walked past them, calm but steady, and greeted the manager first. "Thank you for calling me," I said. "Please ensure no transactions are made without my written consent." Dad's jaw clenched. "You're overreacting." I turned to him, my tone flat. "Overreacting? You ignored your grandson's heart surgery. You knew the date. You had the audacity to text me about a dress 3 days later." Mom scoffed. "We assumed it was a minor procedure. You should have communicated better." Those words hit like static, that familiar shifting of blame. The same tactic they'd used my entire life. When they missed my graduation, it was, "You should have reminded us." When they forgot my birthday, it was, "You take things too personally." "Not this time." "Mom," I said softly, "you've mistaken my silence for submission. That was my fault." Dad leaned forward. "We're your parents. We built you. You owe us respect." "No," I replied, meeting his stare. "I owe my son's safety." The manager excused himself discreetly, sensing a storm that didn't need an audience. Mom lowered her voice. "Rachel, if you do this, you'll regret it. Family doesn't turn on family." I picked up my purse, the same one I'd bought with money they once borrowed and never returned. "You turned on me the moment you chose status over your grandson's life." And with that I walked out, not in anger but in closure. Outside, the air smelled cleaner than it had in years. That afternoon I sat by Liam's hospital bed, watching his chest rise and fall with the rhythm of machines. The world outside felt loud, but here, it was still, fragile, sacred. He stirred, opening his eyes slowly. "Mom, did Grandma come?" My throat tightened. "No, sweetheart. She's busy with Aunt Claire's wedding." He blinked, too young to understand what kind of people skip a child's surgery but demand money for a dress. "It's okay," he whispered. "We have us." And somehow those 3 words stitched something in me that years of therapy couldn't. When the nurse came in, she smiled softly. "He's recovering beautifully. Strong kid like his mom." I smiled back, though part of me was already planning my next step. I wasn't just cutting emotional ties. I was untangling every financial knot they'd tied around my life. That evening I called my financial advisor. "I want to move everything," I said. "Savings, business funds, all into new accounts. Separate from any family access." He hesitated. "All of it? Even your parents' co-signed investments?" "Especially those." By nightfall the transfers were complete. Years of shared accounts, gone in a click. At midnight my sister Claire texted. "Mom's losing it. You're ruining the wedding. Dad says you're ungrateful after everything they did for you." I typed back one sentence. Tell Dad that gratitude isn't a leash. Then I silenced my phone and sat beside Liam, tracing his tiny fingers curled around mine. The monitor beeped steadily, a soft reminder that he, was what mattered. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't funding their comfort. I was protecting my peace. Tomorrow they'd learn what real boundaries felt like. Morning brought chaos, not from the hospital but from my voicemail. 12 missed calls. 4 from Mom, 3 from Dad, 5 from Claire. The last message came from an unknown number. Ms. Carter, this is Samuel from Community Trust Bank. Your parents are disputing account ownership. They've presented old authorization letters claiming joint access. Could you come in today? I almost laughed. Even after everything, they were still trying to find a loophole. At the bank, Samuel looked uneasy as I handed him the binder I'd carried for years. Every statement, receipt, and signature carefully archived. Everything after 2017 is under my sole authorization, I said, sliding him the proof. They haven't contributed a cent since. He scanned the papers, nodding. This settles it. You've got full legal control. We'll flag their profiles to prevent future access attempts. I thanked him, then turned to see Mom and Dad sitting in the lobby. They looked smaller now, not because they'd aged but because they'd lost their illusion of power. Mom's voice was brittle. You're humiliating us. I met her gaze. You humiliated yourself when you valued a wedding dress over your grandson's heartbeat. Dad's jaw tightened. We raised you. You wouldn't have anything without us. I smiled sadly. Maybe. But you taught me what not to become. Their silence lingered as I walked past them, heels clicking across the marble floor. Outside, the sky was gray, the kind that promised rain but never quite delivered. I tilted my face upward, breathing in the cold air. I wasn't angry anymore. Just done. When I returned to the hospital, Liam was coloring in a book. You okay, Mom? He asked. Better than okay, I said, kneeling beside him. We're building something new, just us. He grinned. Like a team. The best one, I said. And this time I meant it. 2 days later, a letter arrived, handwritten, formal, laced with guilt. Rachel, we didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought Claire's wedding was important for the family's image. You've always been so independent. We assumed you didn't need us there. Please unfreeze the accounts. We'll pay you back soon. I folded the letter carefully and set it beside Liam's medical bills. Real responsibilities versus performative love. The contrast was almost poetic. That afternoon I met with my attorney, Janine. She reviewed the letter, shaking her head. Classic financial abuse, she said. They're guilt-tripping you to regain control. You did the right thing cutting ties. Still feels wrong, I admitted. They're my parents. Janine looked up steady. No, Rachel. They're adults who made choices. You're a parent now too, and you're making better ones. Later I sat with Liam on the porch, coloring beside him. His crayons rolled across the table, one falling to the ground. I picked it up and laughed quietly, a small, ordinary moment that felt like life rebuilding itself. When my phone buzzed again, it was another message from Claire. Mom says you owe her. She put her name on your college loan papers. She could ruin your credit. I smiled and texted back. Already refinanced. Tell her to keep the receipts. Then for the first time I blocked them all. That night, as Liam slept peacefully, I opened my journal and wrote. I used to chase love by paying for it. Now I'm learning that love doesn't invoice you. Outside, rain began to fall, soft, steady, cleansing. And in that quiet rhythm I realized, I hadn't lost my family. I'd simply stopped funding my own pain. The next morning the inevitable storm arrived. Not emotional but legal. My bank called to inform me that my parents had attempted to open a joint loan using my old identification documents. The fraud alert triggered instantly, freezing their attempt before it reached approval. When the manager finished explaining, he sighed. Ms. Carter, I've seen this before. Families trying to exploit financial trust. You've handled this better than most. I thanked him and hung up, my pulse calm, my conscience clear. There was no shock anymore. Just confirmation of who they'd always been. At lunch, Janine called. You've got every legal safeguard in place now. But I need to ask, do you want to pursue charges? For a long moment I stared out the window at the hospital courtyard, where Liam was walking slowly with his nurse. His small steps, his laughter. They were worth more than any inheritance or bloodline. No, I said finally. I just want them out of my life. Janine's tone softened. Then you already won. That evening, Claire texted from a new number. They're saying you've turned cold. That you're punishing them. I typed back slowly. I'm not punishing anyone. I'm protecting a child from learning what neglect looks like. She didn't reply. When I tucked Liam into bed, he whispered, Mom, when I get better, can we go somewhere far? Like really far? I smiled. Anywhere you want. He grinned sleepily. Then I want the beach. Just us. Later that night I booked the tickets, 2 seats, 1 future. For years they used guilt as currency. Now I'd learned to trade in peace. And peace, it turned out, had better returns. A week later I took Liam to the Oregon coast. The air smelled like salt and forgiveness. He ran barefoot through the sand, a thin scar peeking from beneath his t-shirt, proof of what we'd survived. I watched him chase waves, his laughter echoing louder than any memory of what they'd done. For the first time in months my phone stayed off. No notifications, no demands, no guilt. Just wind and light and the steady rhythm of the sea reminding me I'd finally broken the cycle. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I opened my email for the first time all week. There were messages from clients, colleagues, and one unread from my mother. We're selling the house. Your father says we've lost too much because of you. You've changed. You used to care. I read it twice, then clicked archive. Change. That was the word she couldn't understand. I hadn't become cruel. I'd become conscious. Later, I tucked Liam into his blanket, his skin warm against the ocean breeze. Do you think Grandma's still mad? He asked sleepily. I smiled softly. Maybe. But anger fades when it has no audience. He yawned. I'm glad you're my mom. Those 6 words were worth more than every dollar they drained from me. When he drifted off, I sat outside our beach cabin watching the tide pull away from the shore. Every wave that retreated felt like another layer of history leaving my skin. I realized then, I hadn't cut ties out of bitterness. I'd simply refused to drown with people who never learned to swim. Tomorrow we'd head home. Not to rebuild what was broken but to start something better, built on honesty, not obligation. 6 months later the world felt different. Quieter. Stronger. Liam was healthy, thriving, his scar barely visible, his smile bigger than ever. I'd started a small foundation in his name, the Carter Heart Initiative, to help single parents afford pediatric surgeries. It wasn't about revenge or redemption. It was about purpose. Turning pain into protection. At the foundation's launch, a local reporter asked, "What inspired you to start this?" I hesitated, then smiled. Once upon a time, no one showed up for my son. I decided that would never happen to another child again. The next day, an envelope arrived at my office. No return address, just my mother's handwriting. Inside was a check for $500 and a short note. I saw the news. You've done well. I hope this helps the children. For a moment my throat tightened. Not from sentiment, but from the strange peace that comes when you stop expecting apologies. I folded the check neatly, slipped it into a donation box labeled anonymous and whispered, "It will." That evening, Liam and I stood outside watching the sunset. The air smelled like summer rain. He held my hand and asked, "Mom, are we happy now?" I looked at him, alive, free, safe, and nodded. "Yes, baby. We're happy." Later, as he slept, I logged into my bank account, not to check balances but to smile at the quiet screen. No shared access. No withdrawals. No manipulation. Just clean numbers. My freedom, I realize, doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it hums softly through steady breaths, through a child's heartbeat, through peace you no longer have to buy. I turned off the light and whispered into the dark. They taught me what love isn't. He's teaching me what it is.